Hello and welcome. So in today's tutorial I'll be taking you through the process of how to draft and cut this beautiful gown that we can see in this video. It's very easy, so let's dive into the process. So I have my pattern paper and I've drawn 1/2 inch at the top of the paper. Now, because the bustier doesn't have a shoulder, it's just like an off-shoulder bustier, I place my tape from 6 inches, okay, to mark my half cut and my waist length. Now, if you do not know where to place your tape from, you can mark your bust point. The bust point for the measurement I'm using is 10.5 inches, and that is what I'm going ahead to mark, as you can see. Now, from your bust point, you can decide to come up by, let's say, maybe 4 inches, 5 inches, or 6 inches, depending on how much you want your cleavage to be covered or the top of your chest to be covered. Okay, but for this measurement, I placed my tape from 6 inches. I took my measurements from 6 inches of my tape because, of course, the sleeve, the cape sleeve is what became the shoulder of the dress. Now I'm going ahead to mark my bustier. You see, I marked the line I have in the middle is 4 inches. That's my bust wideness, and then I came in 1 inch on the center side. Then the side, I came in 1.2 inches, and I'm going ahead to connect to the bust point. Okay, so you have your bust wideness. I'm using 4 inches, and that's the straight line I had. And then from the waist to the half cut, I came in 1 inch on the center side, and then by the side 1.2 inches. Now at the top, I came in 3/4 of an inch where I'm connecting the line. Now that the measurement there was 3/4 of an inch, and this other side the measurement was 1.2 inches. Okay, so this is what I have, and it's very simple. This is a straight cut bustier that we are using. Okay, it's a straight cut bustier, and because there's no shoulder, so from that 1/2 inch I'm going ahead to mark my armhole length. The armhole length for this measurement is 7.8 inches because the bust is 38 inches. So I went ahead to mark that point so that I would also get my armhole round. Okay, and if you don't know how to measure your armhole length, it's your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. So 38 inches divided by 6 plus 1.5 gave me the length I used. So at this point, it's time to mark we have created our bustier. It's very simple, very simple. If you're confused, just go back and rewatch. So I'm measuring my bust. My bust divided by 4 is 9.5 inches, which is what I've marked. And then I measured the gap, the allowance, that allowance, I replaced it and added 2-inch allowance. The same thing down. My under bust is 32 inches divided by 4 is 8 inches. Then I measured the dart intake for the bustier, which is 2.2 inches, and I went ahead to add extra allowance of 2 inches, and that is what I was able to use to get the shape on the dress. Okay, now from the armhole, I'm going to curve from the armhole length. I'm going to curve it in to the original bustier measurements, which is the first marking that we have there. Can you see that? So go ahead and curve your armhole. So like I said, if there's any point that you need clarity, just rewind the video, take it back and rewatch, and it's very simple. In fact, at this point we are done with our drafting. The next thing we want to do is just to give it a nice curve by the side. As you can see, I just added, just at the bust area, I just added just 1/4 inch allowance just to avoid shortages. Okay, yeah, just to avoid shortages because of the armhole we have created. So I just at this point just give it a nice curve. This is just to add beauty to the dress. Okay, so I went up by 1 inch, and curved it, but after looking at it, I decided to go by 1.5 inch. You can even go as high as 2 inches, but 1.5 inch will also do justice to the style. So that's what we have there, and we are done. We are ready to cut. So at this point, I'm just labeling my patterns just for clarity. CP means center piece, SP means side piece. And remember, when you're cutting this into your fabric, you have to fold your fabric into two, okay? So now I want to draft the back piece. And if you look at the style very well, the back is deeper than the front. So I just folded the center piece of my pattern. I folded 2 inches inwards, as you can see. So because I have a deeper back, and it's of course, since it's deeper, it's going to be smaller, I left that space for my zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inch, and then at the base of the pattern I marked 1 inch just to avoid zipper bulge, so it's not straight. This is the shape we have. At the top is 1.5 inch. I subtracted ½ inch downwards, okay? Yes, to avoid zipper bulge, and I'm going ahead to connect it. Now this method for cutting back piece is one that I've used over time, and it's very simple. It's not difficult. Just watch carefully. Now if you can see that line I marked across, I marked out just to I'm just going to connect a slant, okay? Just a slant. So you can see I marked out extra ½ inch at the other side to replace the ½ inch I took at the zipper bulge, and then I'm just going to slant it. It's very simple. Just fold. I've used this over time and it works very fine. Very simple, and you can cut out, and this becomes your back center piece, okay? Yes, so you have to label this properly, both the up and the down, so that you don't misplace the pieces, especially when joining. Now for the back piece, I'm labeling that this portion is the side for the zipper allowance. D means that's the down or base of the pattern, okay? Now for the side piece, I place the side piece on another piece of paper, and I'm just going ahead to trace it out. That's what I'm doing. You can see I'm tracing it out exactly. Then I'll use the center piece to cut out the back side piece. Please just watch carefully. Like I said, it's very simple. Trace out everything except the bust, because our back piece does not have a bust here, okay? So just trace out everything except the bust, then you take it out, then you bring your center piece and place. Now can you see that? Can you see how we have it so aligned? Very simple. So when you place it, now because the back is lower, we're also going to be trimming the side. We're also going to be shortening the side according to be the same length with the front. Now can you see that? So I went ahead to connect it, and it's very simple. Once you do this, go ahead and cut your pattern. Alright, so we are moving over to the skirt piece, and for the skirt piece we are going to be placing our tape from 16 inches. Now, why are we placing our tape from 16 inches? Remember, I forgot to mention earlier, the waist length for the upper part of my dress was 18 inches. Okay, now 18 inches subtract 2 inches from 18 inches. Why? Because we shaped, remember that curve, that fine curve we gave at the upper part of the dress, that was 1.5 inch, then plus half inch for the joining of the dress, that's 2 inches. So at the end of the day, my dress is going to be joined at 16 inches. So that is why I started my tape from 16 inches. I'm really sorry my camera couldn't cover the beginning of the skirt, but I placed my tape from 16 inches, and from that point I marked my hip length, which is 24 inches. What I'm drawing there is my knee length, which is 34 inches, and then of course the paper couldn't give me a long skirt, so we are marking it as a short skirt. But since you're marking yours, go ahead and mark your skirt length. Then you're going to place your hip measurement, which is the hip here is 42 inches divided by 4, that's 10 and a half, plus 1.5 inch allowance. Then from the knee length, I'm going to subtract 1 from that 10 and a half, which is 9.5, plus the 1.5 inch allowance. And then of course for the skirt length, you can subtract half inch or 1 inch and then replace on the skirt length as well. While for the top of the skirt, we are going to maintain the measurements that we used at the top of the skirt, the last measurement. So if you use your waist measurement or your half cut measurement, it is the same thing you are going to be placing on the top of the skirt, plus 1.5 inch allowance. Okay, the allowance for the skirt is 1.5 inch because there are no multiple joinings, it's just joining by the side. Meanwhile, for the blouse, you had to join the bustier part. Okay, I hope you understand. So that is it for the cutting of the skirt. Is very simple. Now go ahead and place this skirt on another paper fold, because you are going to be having two pieces. The difference between the first skirt and the second one is that this second one does not have any allowance. You are going to be cutting your exact measurement without allowance. This is going to be what we are this is what we are going to be using for the wrapper effect. Okay, so just go ahead and cut without allowance and place the same shape. You're going to be having shortage at the center part, and then go ahead and measure. So the first one, M, is the main skirt, and then I label the second one wrap. Okay, so we are going ahead to use our main skirt to cut our back piece. All right, that is what I have on fold here, using my main skirt, not my wrap skirt, because the wrap part does not have any extra allowance. So you can see I place my tape on 16, and then from that I'm going to get my hip length and also my slit length. If you want it to have a slit at the back, if you don't want it to have a slit at the back, fine, you can just make it straight. Okay, so the zip allowance I'll be using is 1.5 inch, but at that hip I'll add extra the zip allowance I'm using is 1 inch, but at that hip I made it 1.5 inch for butt allowance, just for butt ease allowance. Okay, so I'm going to be having a little shape at the back, and then from this point, if you're having a slit, just go ahead and shape it back to 1 inch. Okay, because zipper allowance is 1 inch, but if you do not have a slit, just take the 1 inch all the way down. So for here I just created a slit just in case you want to have a slit. Okay, so this is what we have at the back, and then we are going ahead to cut, and then we are going to maintain the same side shaping. You cut for this back piece, and then you cut for the side as well. Please do not forget to label, so especially if you're not going to be using a slit, please label the part that is for the zipper allowance, because you don't want to get confused when you are replacing this pattern, when you are reproducing this pattern on your fabric. So we are done with the back piece, and it's very simple. Please, if you have any questions, do well to ask me and I'll be ready to answer. all right, but this is it, and it's very, very simple. Like I said, do not forget to label the parts. Now we are going to take off the back piece, and we are going to be working on the front pattern for the wrap. Okay, now what I'm going to do on the wrap, this is the wrap part. I'll get a another piece of paper, because if you study the style very well, it was the right side of the wrap that did not enter the zipper allowance. The left side actually started from, it's entered the allowance, not zipper allowance, I'm sorry, side allowance. The left side entered the side allowance, so the left side of the wrap is supposed to be longer than the right side. So I'm just going ahead to replace allowance for just the left side. All right, so go ahead. I just marked excess. What I need is not much, but I just marked 2 inches all round, just 2 inches all round. I will be trimming the excess later. Okay, so I'm just going ahead to replace the allowance for just the left side of the dress. Look at the style again and you understand what I'm talking about. And then I went ahead to cut, as you can see me do. Okay, so I'm done cutting. Now it's time to do the alteration for the wrapper part. Now I'm going ahead to measure, because you can see the top of the wrap, I came down by 3.5 inches. Okay, so that I'll create the slant. And the slant, please take note, the slant, I didn't create it from the allowance on the left side. I put my ruler from the, look at where I stopped. Now look at where I stopped. Can you see where I stopped? I didn't take it all the way to the allowance, because I want to see the effect just from the inward part of the skirt. Now down, I just marked the middle point, because it looked to me like that slit happened in the middle point. Okay, so you can see what I did at the top. Now I took my ruler as well for the side, and I'm connecting it to that middle point. Now can you see that? It's very simple. If you want yours to go inwards more or come downwards more, feel free, but this will give us what we have in the style as well. And then go ahead and cut. Now can you see this? We are done, and we have the wrap part of our skirt. Now we are going back to the main piece. I'm going to bring back the main piece and place this wrap on top, all right, so that you see what it looks like. Now can you see what we have? Now I'm going ahead to align it. Make sure you align it, okay, center to center. Now look, make sure this center is aligned to the center of the main skirt, and then I just went ahead to pin it. Okay, I'll pin it and then trim the excess by the left side. Remember I said I added just excess allowance by the left side, so I'll pin everything and go ahead to trim off the excess, and then I'll work on the second slit, because the second slit happened on the main fabric. Now you can see that excess I have, okay, on the wrap fabric. I went ahead to trim it off to align with the main fabric, and then I'll flip it back and we have it even. Okay, now I'm going ahead to create the second slit, and what I will do is I'm going to measure what I have left from the center piece to the right side. I'm going to measure what I have left and I'll divide it into 2. So I divided it into 2 and I marked that point. Then I located where I want the slit to cross. Now if you look at the style, the slit was like, it started from, or it met at about 3 inches from the knee point. Okay, so just go ahead and measure 3 inches from your kneecap and mark that point, which is what I marked. Okay, so I was getting about 31 inch. So I now, from that point, I now joined it to what I marked down. Now you can see what we have. Like I said, if it was a longer skirt, you're going to have it at a longer length. Now go ahead and cut. So after cutting, the next thing I did was to raise up the wrap fabric and go ahead and trim it to your desire. So we are trimming it so that it will not interrupt when working. So you can trim it as much as you desire. You can trim it up to this length, or you can slant it, as long as it doesn't affect the top of the fabric. Okay, just slant it as desired. So I'll go ahead and trim it off and we are done with the front piece for the skirt part. It's that simple. So I'll bring it down and then you see what we have. So you can see what we have. Yeah, so when you are cutting this on your fabric, you just place it on your fabric, make sure that you are placing it on the good side of the fabric so that you have them in this position as you can see in the video. So we are done with the front piece. Of course, and when you're cutting it on your fabric, please ensure you cut them because they are not the same shape. So you have to, you're not folding your fabric into 2. You cut all the separate pieces. You cut the pieces separately. So the next thing I have is the paper for the cape. And how are we going to calculate that? So now remember, for the back, it was the front, we started at 6 inches, but we subtracted 2 inches from the back. So the length for the back is 8 inches. So we're adding 1 inch allowance to make it 9 inches. 1 inch is allowance for the sewing. So on my fabric, this is what I marked. I marked that 1 inches on my paper rather. So I marked 9 inches. 6 plus 2 we subtracted, and then 1 inch for allowance. Now for the front, the entire length of the front is 18 inches because of the waistline. Now remember that when we were marking the upper part, we mark our bust point, half cut, and waist measurement. So the waist measurement, the waist length is 18 inches. So now I've gone ahead to fold my paper. That's why you have the front longer. If you look at the picture, the front is longer than the back. So I've gone ahead to fold my paper at that 9 inches because that will become our center point. So I'm using a width of 5 at the top and ½ inch downwards. That is for the front. And then if you watch carefully, you see how I'm using my pattern ruler to give it a curve. Now I went ahead, after this I also marked for the back. I marked, now making the curve. Now you can see that now the back piece, the paper is white, so you really can't see where it stops, but where I marked is where for the back piece stops. I also marked ½ inch and I also went ahead to curve it for the back. But after doing this, I looked at the picture again and I realized that the back, the width downwards was wider, about 2 inches width more. So what I did was, after now I still attached a paper and increased the width downwards for the back. So instead of marking ½ inch for the back, I added paper and then I marked extra 1½ inch, okay, to make it 2 inches. So when you're marking yours, instead of, now you can see what I have. I'm going ahead to show you what I'm talking about. Now look at what I did. You see that extra fabric I attached an extra fabric and just aligned it. But if you are marking yours, just make the end, that's the back length for the back, make it 2 inches width and connect it to the center. So by the time I attach this on my fabric, I'll have the front longer and the back shorter. Okay, study the style very well and you see why it is so. You understand when you look at the style very well. And at this point, I'm done with the cape, so I'm going ahead to show you what it would look like. Now can you see how it will be for the back? I'm pinning it. I'm sorry I didn't capture that, but you see it when I'm done pinning it. And that's the back side piece, by the way. So I'm pinning it to the side piece. Now can you see that it's pinned to the side piece? Then I bring the front. Remember, the front is longer than the back in terms of the height. Now can you see that? Now this is what it will look like. So I'm just going ahead to adjust it so that you get an idea, a proper idea of what it will look like. Okay, so I will be, now look at this. So this is how it will be looking when we're making the fabric. Of course, we are going to be placing it on the bustier part. Okay, so this is all about how to draft this dress. Thank you so much for watching and stay connected. Bye.